Well, you are not alone tonight in this country if you disapprove of Donald Trump's presidency. A new poll finds the highest disapproval number that Donald Trump has ever had. If you disapprove of the job Donald Trump is doing as president, you are joined by 63% of Americans.
He doesn't just criticize Trump, he dissects him. A late-night surgeon with a scalpel of reason and a smirk that says, "This is your leader?" Lawrence O'Donnell doesn't rant. He lets the facts roast themselves, one contradiction at a time. The brilliance isn't in insult, but in how easily he exposes the theater of a man still acting like the Oval Office is a TV set. What follows isn't commentary. It's a calm, surgical demolition.
The difference between the Charles who calls himself a king and the Donald who wants to be one is that Donald Trump does not care what comes after him. Charles wants the monarchy to live forever. Donald Trump knows that he cannot live forever. Donald Trump knows that his presidency cannot live forever. So Donald Trump knows that all he has to do is keep the Epstein files secret for the next 3.5 years.
Trump's presidency played like a 4-year open mic night where the jokes wrote themselves and the punchlines ran for office. O'Donnell walks into the chaos like a professor entering a kindergarten. Crayons, tantrums, and a man scribbling outside the lines, calling it leadership. His breakdowns of Trump's latest moves feel less like analysis and more like national therapy. A steady voice guiding viewers through the noise with wit and weary precision.
More Americans disapprove of Donald Trump tonight than they did after the January 6th attack on the Capitol. And you are not alone tonight if you disapprove of Donald Trump's handling of the government shutdown. You are part of the 61% majority who disapprove of Donald Trump's handling of the government shutdown. You are not alone tonight if you blame Donald Trump for worsening economic conditions. 61% blame Donald Trump's policies for worsening.
Trump's approach to governing still feels like a pop quiz he never studied for, insisting confidence counts as knowledge. O'Donnell reminds viewers the presidency isn't a pageant, yet we're watching a man treat every press conference like swimsuit season. The issue isn't just the performance, it's that the stakes are real, and the applause comes from the same crowd that confuses volume with vision and shouting with strength. The spectacle keeps playing. The cost keeps rising.
Donald Trump's apparent need to keep the Epstein files secret becomes more vivid every day, especially with every new day of the government shutdown. Congressman Robert Garcia is a leader of the Democrats who have joined with some Republicans in the House of Representatives who are trying to have the Epstein files released, and he now sees the government shutdown as being as much or more about the Epstein files as it is about the federal budget.
It's hard not to marvel at the irony. A billionaire who cries victim, a president playing the persecuted underdog while holding the power of the state. O'Donnell doesn't need to exaggerate the hypocrisy. He simply holds up the mirror and lets the reflection implode. Every Trump statement lands like a plot twist in a reality show that refuses to end, looping endlessly between outrage and absurdity, spotlight and self-destruction.
Alone tonight in this country if you think the country is moving in the wrong direction. According to a new ABC News poll, 2/3 of the country believes that. 67% say the country is moving in the wrong direction. ABC News notes majorities of Americans in urban, suburban, and rural areas say the country is moving in the wrong direction, as well as those with varying levels of education.
When O'Donnell talks about the economy, he doesn't just show charts, he brings receipts. The kind that reveal the self-proclaimed business genius overseeing a debt surge big enough to make accountants weep. Yet Trump still pitches it as triumph, as if bankruptcy were simply rebranded innovation. In his world, chaos masquerades as courage, and incompetence gets sold as instinct. A masterclass in illusion wrapped in a press release of confidence.
As we reported here last night, Donald Trump will not have a third term in the presidency. We're beginning once again tonight with something that is not actually news, shouldn't be treated as news. Today, even Donald Trump himself gave up the game of using talk of a Trump third term as a way of diverting news attention away from from the Trump cruelties, especially the denial of food to hungry people around the world, and soon.
And then there's the Patriotism Act, the grand, flag-waving spectacle staged by a man who treats loyalty like a temporary contract. O'Donnell doesn't mock patriotism. He mourns what it's become. Under Trump, the flag isn't a symbol anymore. It's a stage prop, an accessory to illusion. Every rally, every speech, every self-congratulatory moment turns nationalism into performance art, choreographed for cameras and headlines. Trump's speeches play like verbal mazes where facts go to disappear, and O'Donnell approaches decoding them like an archaeological dig. Each sentence unearths another fossilized contradiction. One moment he's preaching unity. The next he's dividing the audience like it's a campaign strategy. O'Donnell doesn't shout about the absurdity. He quietly unpacks it until the delusion collapses under the pressure of logic. Watching him analyze Trump feels like watching a scientist dissect a fever dream, methodical, fascinated, and slightly horrified. What makes his takedown so devastating isn't the sarcasm, but the calm precision. He doesn't just point out the blunders. He connects them, revealing a pattern of dysfunction where self-praise substitutes for policy. Every victory is a PR stunt. Every failure a new chance to blame gravity for making things fall. O'Donnell's brilliance lies in making viewers laugh, wince, and think, often all at once. Nat.
But majorities of Americans in all of those categories believe the country is moving in the wrong direction. So you are not alone no matter where you live in this country if you think Donald Trump is moving the country in the wrong direction. In that same ABC News poll, 64% of Americans say Trump is going too far in trying to expand the power of the presidency. In 288 days in the presidency this time, Donald Trump has managed to unify the country.
When O'Donnell revisits Trump's cabinet chaos, it plays like a sitcom without a steady cast. One day you're fired, the next you're forgotten, and somehow the revolving door keeps spinning faster. He frames it as a case study in leadership insecurity. A man allergic to expertise but addicted to applause. Trump's team isn't built for governance. It's assembled for flattery. A chorus of yes men competing to outshine the spotlight. It's not politics, it's pageantry. Then comes the foreign policy segment, Trump's version of global diplomacy, where alliances are temporary and insults are currency. O'Donnell peels back the layers with surgical sarcasm, exposing how Trump turns complex negotiations into playground theater. Every handshake becomes a power struggle. Every summit, a stage show crafted for domestic ratings. Allies aren't partners. They're props for photo ops. The irony is sharp. In his quest to make America respected again, he's made it a punchline with subtitles. When O'Donnell examines Trump's fixation on image, his tone turns almost poetic. The orange glow, the oversized ties, the choreographed bravado. It isn't vanity, it's armor. Trump didn't just build a brand. He became one. But brands demand upkeep, and O'Donnell shows how the maintenance has consumed the man entirely.
Today in Air Force One, after his meetings in China, he told reporters something that would be unthinkable for any other president in that situation. He said, quote, "Taiwan never came up. It was not discussed." Taiwan never came up. No kidding. It never comes up unless the American president brings it up. No Chinese dictator has ever jumped into a discussion on Taiwan unless forced to by an American president. And so Donald Trump is treating himself as just a spectator in the back of the room saying Taiwan never came up. Don't know why, it just never came up. Thereby proving the utter pointlessness of the Trump world tour, other than as a distraction from the Epstein files and a distraction from the cruelties that Donald Trump was inflicting around the world.
O'Donnell observes how every controversy feeds the myth, scandal as oxygen, outrage as applause. The performance never ends because the spotlight can't fade. It's not leadership, it's dependency. And at the center of it all lies the chaos of communication, the endless stream of social media posts, a digital diary from a leader who treats governance like a string of trending hashtags. O'Donnell doesn't just mock the tweets. He dissects the psychology behind them. Each post reveals insecurity dressed as strength, validation disguised as defiance. He doesn't need punchlines. Trump supplies them in real time. The humor lands because it's anchored in truth. O'Donnell doesn't exaggerate Trump's contradictions. He simply assembles them until the absurdity becomes self-evident. The president promises discipline, then delivers chaos. Vows transparency, then buries the receipts. The inconsistencies aren't accidents. They're the architecture of his persona. O'Donnell presents it all like an artist uncovering a hidden image within the noise. Once the pattern appears, you can't unsee it. What emerges isn't just satire, but diagnosis, a portrait of a man fueled by attention and sustained by spectacle, forever mistaking the echo of applause for the sound of authority.
Is what the third term talk was supposed to do, and largely succeeded in doing, get the TV pundits to talk about the third term, instead of talking about taking food and medicine away from the poorest people in the world when Donald Trump closed down the United States Agency for International Development. Have pundits talk about the third term in welcoming tones in right-wing media and terrified tones in the rest of the media, so that they are not talking about the Epstein files, so that they're not talking about Donald Trump becoming the first president in history to suspend the food stamp program.
Even Trump's rallies get the O'Donnell treatment, a surreal mix of spectacle and self-pity. The cheering crowds, the recycled grievances, the looping monologues packaged as rebellion. O'Donnell frames them as the political version of a greatest hits tour. The set list never changes, but the delusion gets louder. The irony is cinematic, a movement built on authenticity, led by a man who treats reality like a negotiable contract. Then comes corruption, O'Donnell's sharpest arena. He exposes how Trump converts public service into private gain, running a transactional presidency disguised as patriotism. Every policy comes with a footnote, every announcement with a loophole. The brilliance lies in O'Donnell's ability to connect the dots, to show that the chaos isn't random, it's profitable. When Trump boasts of success, O'Donnell doesn't debate, he audits. The numbers tell the story. Markets surge, then stumble. Jobs spike, then vanish. Debt balloons, while accountability evaporates. Trump calls it strategy. O'Donnell calls it improvisation gone wrong. It's the economic equivalent of juggling chainsaws blindfolded and insisting it's under control simply because the applause hasn't stopped. Beneath the noise, O'Donnell reveals a truth Trump can't spin. Performance can't fix the math forever.
Elon Musk experienced the seventh worst day of his life today, with the stock market crashing on fears of a Donald Trump-caused recession, which Wall Street is calling the Trump session. Getting a recession named after you as president is not easy. It usually is not so clear, not an absolute straight line of causation from presidential policies to a recession. And so no one called any of the recessions of our lifetimes a president recession, a Bush recession, or a Reagan recession, or, none of that. They didn't try to do that with the name of any other.
Even Trump's war with the media becomes a paradox under O'Donnell's gaze. He exposes the irony of a president who craves attention, yet resents scrutiny. A man who feeds off coverage while condemning it. The battle isn't about bias, it's about ego management. O'Donnell lays it out plainly. Trump doesn't hate the media, he hates mirrors that don't flatter. The joke isn't on the journalists, it's on the man who can't exist without them. As O'Donnell navigates Trump's scandals, each one unravels like a tragicomedy. The hush money, the investigations, the revolving door of denials. It's less a matter of legality than of loyalty. Every accusation becomes a loyalty test. Every defense, a confession disguised as outrage. O'Donnell doesn't gloat. He observes, almost academically, marveling at how corruption can be so consistent yet so chaotic. It's not a scandal. It's a system, a lifestyle built on perpetual crisis management. Then comes the myth of strength, the self-styled image Trump loves to project. O'Donnell dismantles it with surgical patience, showing how each boast conceals insecurity and every act of bravado masks fear. True strength doesn't crave applause, and real confidence doesn't demand validation. The man who calls himself a fighter spends his days shadowboxing imaginary enemies while ignoring real ones. The contrast is devastating and darkly comic.
Always recognized the Trump third-term talk as a diversionary tactic, not to be indulged, but only to be identified as the diversionary tactic that it is. Today, Donald Trump himself finally was forced to admit today, no doubt at the urging of Republicans in Congress who would find it unbearable to go into next year's congressional elections with Donald Trump threatening, no matter how empty the threat, a third Trump.
When O'Donnell examines Trump's approach to crisis, it becomes dark satire. Pandemics, protests, economic collapse. Each turns into another episode in the ongoing saga of denial and deflection. Trump doesn't just fail to lead. He performs failure. Optics outweigh outcomes, and O'Donnell exposes it with surgical precision. The laughter isn't from exaggeration. It's from recognition. The absurdity of watching someone argue with reality and expect to win. Trump's relationship with the truth is where O'Donnell thrives. Every false claim is treated like a museum artifact, cataloged, analyzed, and displayed under a harsh light for all to see. His job isn't merely to refute, it's to remind viewers that each falsehood is another brick in a growing wall of delusion. The structure keeps rising, and O'Donnell methodically traces every addition. When attention shifts to Trump's supporters, O'Donnell applies the same surgical irony. He doesn't mock them. He analyzes the phenomenon. They follow personality, not policy. He shows how a cult of personality sustains itself, fueled by grievance, nostalgia, and spectacle. The laughter he draws isn't cruel, it's cathartic. The relief of recognizing absurdity for exactly what it is, and the precision with which he exposes it, makes it uncomfortably compelling.
Donald Trump said he was going to change his illegal and unconstitutional tariff structure with China, leaving most of the illegal and unconstitutional tariffs in place. And he did that a week before the United States Supreme Court will hear the first case brought to them challenging the illegal and unconstitutional Trump tariffs. This week is the worst week for Donald Trump to be playing arbitrary public games with his tariffs, showing how non-policy based they are.
Even Trump's legal troubles read like dark comedy in O'Donnell's hands. Investigations, indictments, denials, all delivered with the same inflated bravado. O'Donnell dissects it like a procedural drama where the plot never progresses, yet the chaos keeps escalating. Every twist feels painfully familiar. Deny, deflect, declare victory, repeat. The show never ends because accountability never arrives. Then O'Donnell zooms out, connecting Trump's personal turmoil to the larger political picture. The genius of Trump's strategy, if it can be called that, is his ability to dominate the narrative even when it backfires. O'Donnell frames it as what it truly is, a feedback loop of dysfunction fueled by ego and amplified by spectacle. The tragedy is that it works, but O'Donnell's sharpest punchline isn't laughter, it's revelation. He reminds viewers that the presidency isn't meant to be a branding exercise, and leadership isn't performance art. Trump's greatest con isn't the lies he tells others. It's the illusion he sells himself. The man who wanted to be seen as the strongest is revealed as the neediest. The comedy slowly slides into tragedy, broadcast in real time, while O'Donnell methodically traces every contradiction, exposing the structure beneath the chaos. Watching it unfold is both horrifying and uncomfortably mesmerizing.
Impossibility is written all over the notion of a third presidential term, and Republicans are supposed to know that because it was the Republican Party that created term limits for the presidency through a constitutional amendment. After the most popular president in history, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was elected president 4 consecutive times beginning in 1932, Republicans went to work to prevent that from...
By the time O'Donnell finishes, it isn't anger that lingers. It's a mix of exhaustion and clarity. He's less a comedian than a cartographer, charting the landscape of dysfunction with sharp wit and precise observation. The roast doesn't burn, it cleanses. It peels back the myth to reveal what was obvious all along, a presidency built on spectacle, sustained by denial and perpetually primed for parody. Trump remains in office, still spinning, still selling, still insisting that applause equals achievement. But O'Donnell's analysis hangs in the air like an echo that won't fade. The laughter it produces isn't mere humor. It's recognition, a collective sigh from a country realizing it's been living inside a rerun. The brilliance lies not in punchlines, but in restraint. O'Donnell doesn't need to shout. Reality already does the heavy lifting. He doesn't need to exaggerate. Truth has outpaced satire. The demolition is complete not through fury, but through reason. The emperor's new clothes are exposed in full, yet O'Donnell doesn't have to point. He lets the spotlight fall where it may, illuminating absurdity and ego alike. Watching him work is both clarifying and unnerving. A methodical unmasking of chaos disguised as leadership, a surgical reminder that spectacle can never substitute for substance.